All right, folks, the Malsburg panel is assembled for this hour, and joining me in studio is the host of Steele and Unger on Sirius XM. We say hello once again to our friend Rick Ungar, and also Newsmax Washington, D.C. Correspondent John Gizzi. I got to tell you, John, the truth be known, every time you're going to be on, you know the song, I'm so dizzy, my head is spinning. I don't remember who did that. It's an old song. It dates me. But me and Rick were singing the whole song.
We've been singing it for the past 5 minutes. In your honor.
Yes.
My cup runneth over, but please, fellas, don't give up your day job.
You heard us?
Very good
Maybe
advice.
He heard
You
us.
must have heard us.
All right. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. John, of course, the U.S. Supreme Court hearing the oral arguments, which I said easier that time when I said it to Mark O'Mara, I stumbled. The oral arguments on Hobby Lobby. He's of the opinion that it's going to go the way of the government.
Well, I'm not exactly sure. First of all, after totally guessing wrong on how the Supreme Court would rule on the fate of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, in 2012, forgive me if I'm a little skittish about guessing which way the 9 justices in private conference will rule, especially before the arguments are laid out. There's precedence in different ways. On the one hand, American Indians were denied the right to use peyote in their religious ceremonies. On the other hand, the Supreme Court, under Earl Warren, not exactly a strict constructionist, ruled that if people's religious faith kept them from working on Saturdays, they could not be fired from their jobs. So in different cases, the religious ceremony has come out either ways in the eyes of justice in the highest court in the land. Who knows?
Rick, do you know?
Actually, that was a really, really good assessment, I have to say, Gizzy. Look, this case is, I think, one of the most interesting cases we've seen in a very long time. Much more interesting than the original Obamacare case. And this is why. There are 2 critical issues at work here. One is the issue of contraception and whether or not a company or anybody can be forced to provide it to employees. But actually the larger issue is whether or not a corporation can be deemed a person. We've seen this recently before when it was considered by the court that a corporation had a right to free speech. Corporations, what's at the heart of this is a 1993 law that would allow a religious believer to opt out of a government program, and the government would have a heavy burden to show that they weren't doing it for religious reasons if it violates the religion. But that law says person. Is the corporation a person? And if it is for purposes of religion, then the next question has to be, then how can you continue to shield shareholders from liability when you use the religious belief of those shareholders to apply to the corporation? Absolutely fascinating.
You know, what's fascinating to me is this, the very premise that birth control has to be provided by an employer in their health care coverage. I mean, we're not talking about a huge sum of money for a woman to get birth control if she chooses to get birth control. I don't know legally how that enters into it, or if it enters into it at all. But, you know, what's to stop the government, as I discussed with Mark O'Mara, from saying, hey, you know, red wine is supposed to be good for you. We've concluded that every employer should make sure that their employee could afford a bottle a week or a bottle a month.
Can I throw in a point of clarification just so the audience understands? This is not about all contraception. This is about the 2 or 3 types of contraception that are considered to kill an egg that has been fertilized.
Right.
Not about anything, not about the pill or something like that. So that we have to focus on that factor. Even if the government were to lose this case, doesn't mean that companies still can't be required to supply contraception, just not that kind.
And John, Justice Kennedy, you know, may not understand what was just said here by Rick, because he said, what if under your premise, he was talking to the government, would an employer be required to provide an abortion in their insurance coverage? And Justice Roberts shot back, they believe they already are in this case. Yeah. So, you know, Kennedy's a Catholic, and he may not have understood that, or maybe that'll change him.
Shouldn't matter that he's a Catholic.
Well, it could matter. It's a Catholic court.
I would certainly hope not.
Go ahead.
Right. Well, excuse me.
Well, wait.
No, it should not matter because they're ruling on cases that affect people of all faiths.
That's right.
Now, I would point out to you something else, that this could well be resolved if Hobby Lobby itself were not made to provide form of health care that includes contraception for employees or anything else that violates religious tenets. If employees do not have a problem with that and it's unavailable under the coverage Hobby Lobby provides, then they could simply go get their own plan that would do this and not be under the corporate aegis. That would be a way that it could be resolved. Now, again, I do not pretend to know what the justices will decide. They have conferences after. Their clerks look up precedent. But remember, using a 1993 precedent does not necessarily make up a roadmap to a decision in 2014.
True. No.
Precedents are overturned throughout history.
There's also a split the baby option here that we should mention. It is certainly within the realm of possibility that the court could come back and say, look, we're going to allow Hobby Lobby, which is a closely held family corporation, to make those decisions. But we're not going to allow General Motors to do that. They're not closely held. They're not a family company. That raises some weird problems. There's a company like Dell, which has a lot of investors, but it's a private company now. So there are a lot of ways this can go. One thing I do want to point out to my progressive friends, I've heard Hobby Lobby being vilified, and that's a mistake. These happen to be very decent people who have paid well above the minimum wage to all their employees, have provided health care for a number of years. Don't vilify the plaintiff here. Look at the importance of the issue.
And the reason,
And don't do it in front of a Sooner in Oklahoma. They love their Hobby Lobby.
And the reason I brought up the Catholic influence. Look, we have justices on this court and previously that have admitted they look to other countries to see how they rule on similar cases and they treat similar cases. So I see nothing wrong with this, with a justice looking to his own religion. And I didn't mean how it only would affect Catholics, but I mean looking to his own religion as a part of who he or she is, and saying, this is how I believe.
You should see something very wrong with that. That's
well,
not
what about other
justices
countries?
are
What about other
supposed to do.
countries?
They actually don't look much to other
Oh,
countries.
yes, they do. Sandra Day O'Connor said they did.
All
Ruth
due
Bader
respect,
Ginsburg.
all due respect, as somebody who spent a lot of years as a lawyer, they look at a lot of things. First and foremost, they consider statute, and before they'll overcome a statute, which is what they'd be doing here, they better have a lot of good case law to back them up. They're not going to look at Great Britain as the decider for what they do. Not going to happen.
And let me add that Steve has given probably the best argument as to why presidents say they're not choosing a conservative or a liberal justice. They're choosing a strict constructionist, someone who reads the Constitution and interprets it accordingly, period.
Well, not all presidents say they nominate strict constructionists.
You just
No,
want to
I'm
turn
just
this
saying
political.
you've made a case for those who do.
Oh, okay.
This is a
Yeah.
great case. We don't need to make it political. This is a fantastic case all on its own. Lots
I
to
think
talk
when you
about
have
here.
Elena Kagan, Obama, as I call her, I think it becomes political right off the bat. She doesn't even belong involved in this case because she helped argue the whole Obamacare thing and promote it in the first
other
place.
side will tell you the same thing about the ones that they don't like, and they'll argue that the Catholics, as Joy Reid did on MSNBC, should be disqualified. All of that is wrong. Nobody should be disqualified. Yeah. These people sitting on the Supreme Court, like their politics or don't like them, they are all highly qualified, and that includes even the most conservative of them. They're capable of reaching a decision without inserting their personal, and I'm including Scalia on that, who was probably the most religious Catholic sitting on the bench. I may not agree with him much, but he's one smart guy.
He certainly is. And fellas, let me leave you with one quote from the cartoon character who lampooned politicians in the 19th century, Finley Peter Dunne. The Supreme Court follows the election returns.
John Gizzi, who is not so dizzy. It's Rick and I who are dizzy. Thank you, John. We'll speak to you later. And, of course, listen to Steele and Ungar on Sirius XM. Rick Ungar, I thank you as always as well. When we come back, Larry Sabato will be here. The Senate to Republicans. We'll talk about it. Don't go away.
Breaking news and breaking hearts. This is the Steve Malzberg Show.